He'll continue to strengthen you and to help you and to allow you to mature spiritually as long as you continue to abide in Him. He is the vine. You are the branch. We need to be sure that we stay connected to Him. Without Him, He tells us, you can do nothing. This is why when we try to do things on our own strength, we fail miserably. We oftentimes make messes of situations because apart from Him, we can do nothing. I remember a time, probably about 15 years ago, we were getting ready to have a vacation Bible school in our church there in Massillon, and my wife and I was excited, and we were wanting to do all that we could, and we went out and we passed out 100 tracts or 100 invitations to this vacation Bible school. One all around Massillon, just everywhere we could think. We were going up and down streets, passing out tracts. Not one single person showed up as a result of us passing out tracts. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a good thing to do, to pass out invitations for vacation Bible school. But there was another time, not so long after that, a lady had walked up the alley, and my wife felt like the Lord wanted her to talk to this woman. So she went over and talked to her, and during the course of their conversation, found out that the lady needed a babysitter. She had gotten a job at the Amish store. She had no one to watch her daughter. So my wife began watching her daughter. And as a couple of weeks went by, it turned into a friendship with this woman, and eventually that evolved into Bible studies, which eventually turned into this woman coming to our church and becoming a Christian and changed her life. And it was something that the Lord, I believe, initiated that. He directed my wife to go talk to her. And I like when those instances happen. As I said, none of us like to go out and pass out 100 invitations and no one show up. It's nice when the Lord guides and directs, and we know for sure that the Lord is speaking to us and leading us, and we're not just out there wasting our time. Without Him, we can do nothing. We need to abide in Him. We need to be sure that we're connected to Him, that we're operating on His strength and not our own strength, lest we make messes of situations. Abiding in Christ is essential to being a fruitful Christian. And being a fruitful Christian is essential. Because He goes on and tells us, He says, every branch in me that beareth not fruit, He taketh away. Every branch that beareth not fruit, He purgeth. Every branch that beareth fruit, He purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch, and is withered. And men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. Growers know which branches are going to produce fruit. They know which ones they need to cut off. When I bought my peach trees, they tell me to cut off certain ones because your peaches won't be as large, and they won't be as good unless you cut out certain areas of your tree. And those who are involved in growing things, I remember my dad, he'd go out and pick off branches of his tomato plants. He'd talk about different ones that aren't going to produce fruit. There's no sense in having it there because it's just going to suck up nutrients. So you might as well remove some of these ones that aren't going to produce. And the same is true spiritually speaking. He says, if a man abide not in me, he's cast forth as a branch and withered. And men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. Your fruit, your holiness, is entirely derived from Christ, from your abiding in Christ. If you choose to unconnect yourself from Him, who is your source of holiness, then you'll turn yourself into a fruitless branch. It's like when you plug a cord into an electrical outlet. You can power up your device, you can run your projector or your radio or whatever it is you're plugging in. You can run it and you can use it because you're connected to the source. The moment you disconnect yourself from that wall outlet, you're no longer connected to the source of power. The same is true spiritually speaking. When we as branches remove ourselves from the vine, when we disconnect ourselves from Christ, we become fruitless branches. And fruitless branches are good for nothing. They might as well be cut off. They might as well be gathered up and burned. There's fruitless branches all around us. just waiting to be gathered and burned, as verse 6 says. Branches which at one point bared fruit, but since have become separated from the vine, have become separated from Christ, and are living in an unprofitable life. What's worse yet, when you choose to become an unfruitful branch, it not only affects you, it affects those around you, those that you have contact with, those in your family. You know, I can think of no person who's more bitter than one who has been around an unfruitful branch. If you've been brought up in a family and there's people who have professed to be Christians, and maybe at one time in their lives they were Christians, one time they lived a godly life, but for some reason they've disconnected themselves from Christ. They've chosen to rebel against Him. They've chosen to do their thing rather than God's thing. And if you've been around them, I've been around individuals who talk about a father or a mother who once served God and how they've made ungodly decisions and done terrible things. And this person that I spoke to is actually rather bitter. You know, they told me about their father and some of the terrible things their father did and how, you know, they were supposed to be a Christian and they did this, and that, and what a wicked life they lived, but yet they claimed to be a Christian. And this person that was telling me this was brought up in church, but yet they no longer attend church. They no longer want anything to do with the church because they were affected by a disconnected branch. They were affected by an unfruitful branch, by a person who once claimed and once lived a Christian life, but have become unfruitful and no longer connected to the vine. The devil would love for all of us to become fruitless branches. You know, when you talk to people on the streets and you talk about church and their need to come to church, they'll often bring up fruitless branches. Oh, I don't go to church. I don't want to go to church because that's where all the hypocrites are. There's too many hypocrites in church. I don't want to be a part of that. And that's when you share with them, well, that's why you ought to go. Because you should rather spend 2 hours on Sunday morning with hypocrites than eternity with them. Because hypocrites aren't going to be in heaven. Fruitless branches aren't going to be in heaven. The only way any of us are going to be in heaven is by us choosing to stay connected to the vine. By abiding in Christ, by allowing ourselves to spend time with Him and allowing Him to speak to us and through us and make us more and more like Jesus. The devil's goal is to make all of us fruitless branches. He tries to get us caught up doing our own things rather than abiding in Christ. Because he knows that we're powerless on our own. He knows that we can do nothing on our own. If he can separate us from Christ, we're nothing. But if we remain in Christ, the Bible tells us that we can do all things through Him. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. The good news is that you can be a fruitful branch. You can be a victorious Christian. You can allow God's Spirit to indwell you and to flow through you so that you'll continue to grow and produce fruit, but not on your own strength. When you come to God to get saved, it's Him that saves you. There's nothing that you could have done to save yourself. There's nothing that you could have done to undo the sins that you've committed in the past, to atone for the sins that you've once committed. And once you get saved, and once you're a Christian, it's Him that keeps you. We get ourselves into trouble when we think that we can do this or do that, or solve this problem or solve that problem. But we have to choose to stay connected to Him. He's the one that keeps us, but we have to choose to stay connected to Him. You know, I heard some time ago about a person who was contemplating coming to church, and they said, well, I'll come to church, but I need to quit smoking first. I'll come to church, but I need to quit drinking first. I'll come to church, but I need to clean up my speech a little bit and stop cursing. And they go down this line of things they need to do. I'll come to church, but I need to get some nicer clothes first. And I'll always tell them, you don't need to do these things first. Come to Christ first. Initiate a relationship with Him first. And He'll guide and direct in your lives. He'll show you what He wants you to do. He'll help you make the changes. Yeah, I'm not saying there's not changes that need to be done in your life, but Jesus will help you make those changes. He'll help you quit smoking. He'll help you quit drinking. He'll clean up your speech. He'll make the changes as He turns you into a new creature. He'll make you into a new creature, and all things will become new. That's His desire to transform us into Christ-likeness. He wants each and every one of us to become more and more like Jesus every day of our lives. And that will only happen if we abide in Him. He is the vine, we are the branches. We can do nothing apart from Him. But we can do all things when we stay connected with Him, when we allow His holiness to flow through us and transform us into new beings.